All right, my name's Alex Irvin, and I'm an MSU student as in Bozeman, as well as an intern here at Ford, Montana. I'm here with Doug Campbell today, who is the Green Party endorsed independent candidate who's running in the 2018 congressional campaign. We'll be conducting these interviews with each House candidate who has agreed to participate, and every candidate will be asked the same set of 8 questions. Doug, are you ready to get started?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, so for the first question, many of our staff and volunteers are LGBTQ and trans. Do you support the expansion of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act to include gender expression along with sexual orientation?
That's a good question. I absolutely support people to live their lives as they see fit, and I don't believe that there should be any restrictions on that. When their rights are abridged, I believe that we already have constitutional uh, constructs in place to defend those. I would hesitate to push any expansion of these right protections off on the federal government because while sometimes that can be, it's not too bad to set a low bar for what we expect, but sometimes it can prevent local governments, states and local governments from raising their own higher bar for that for those protections. And so wherever we can, I think that we need to set those appropriately at the local level rather than telling the federal government, hey, it's here, because once the federal government sets it, it's kind of stuck there.
All right. So, high schoolers and college students across the United States, have been organizing marches and walkouts on their campuses. Do you support closing loopholes in federal laws that allow for the sale of firearms without a background check, including gun shows and online purchases as well?
Yes, as a matter of fact, last week on Friday, I had the best conversation with Helena Youth Against Gun Violence. They had a town hall, and they had such great questions. But one of the main things that every single person there was for enforcing the law. I mean, making the law actually have some teeth. And if you have a law that's sometimes enforced and sometimes not enforced, it's not much of a law. Matter of fact, it can be abused, and people can't really trust in it because they don't know where it does apply and where it doesn't apply. And so, for those laws that we have in place, for those registration laws and background check laws, they should either be uniformly applied for every purchase or not applied at all. You can't have justice when they're arbitrarily applied. Where some Montanans disagree with that and where gun shows and internet sales and private sales make their money is from those Montanans who, rightly or not, believe that the federal government is tracking them in some way. So one suggestion I had was to introduce an intermediary or a fiduciary whose responsibility it is to keep the identity information of the gun purchaser entirely separate, and yet that intermediary has full access to all of the law enforcement and health records that would apply to a background check. And so that person this fiduciary would need to be an entity that's well trusted by the Second Amendment, pro Second Amendment people. And it sounds crazy, but maybe that would be the NRA, right? So have the NRA or whatever entity it is, put them completely in charge, but hold them accountable, liable if necessary, for making sure that all background checks are done for every single purchase, and let them determine how to implement that. But if any issue comes up where a background check was not applied and caused harm or death, they would be a liable party. In any case, in order for us to get beyond this universal background check, we need to get over the hump of the concerns of those Montanans that don't want their house pinpointed on a map of gun registration at the federal government, because rightly or so, they do have fears that at some point the government could potentially become an adversary, and they don't want their location known and how many guns they have.
All right. So, what is your stance on a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants who have come to the United States as a child and who are also known as Dreamers?
Uh, Unfortunately, we don't have any laws which apply to these kids who were brought here as minors, and it's a tough decision. Um, the and as I answer these questions, I want to make it sure it's clear that I don't want to be representing my viewpoints, but I want to be representing the viewpoints of the citizens of Montana. And that's what I think we're missing in our representation these days, is we're getting somebody who says they're going to do one thing, but then they just become themselves and they just represent their own viewpoints when they get into office, or the viewpoints of their biggest donors. I'm not taking any campaign donations because I want to be able to represent all Montanans equally across the board. I think that sorry, I lost my train of thought. Can you just repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, of course. So the question was, what is your stance on path to citizenship?
Path to citizenship, right?
Yeah.
There are people in Montana who are, and again, rightly or not, concerned about the quality of immigrants that have coming to America. I'm not sure how that matters now more than it did, a century ago, or 2 centuries ago, as we were allowing people to come and just inviting people to come farm and make money and become productive citizens. I don't see that it has been a big problem. I mean, everyone that comes to this country either struggles significantly to make a living in the black market, or they're participating and paying taxes and perhaps not getting the benefits of a citizen. So, while I can't answer your question exactly, because it's going to be a long haul, it's going to be a big fight to get this done. My personal feeling is that we ought to do the right thing. These people are productive citizens. They don't know any other country than the U.S. They were brought here as minors, so they haven't committed a crime as an adult. We need to create a special situation for them to allow a path to citizenship, or allow them to make a choice as to where they want to be in the world now that they are adults.
All right, that's awesome. Okay, so Montanans love public lands, and many of our peers hope to pass along our wilderness area to our children, such as our parents did for us. So how do you feel about opening more areas of public lands up for oil and gas drilling?
Another tough question. In my youth, I was an avid Boy Scout, and my relationship with the outdoors and with open space and public lands came from being a scout. And the biggest thing you learn as a scout, which is great for everyone to learn, is when you've gone someplace, you leave it better than it was when you were there. It is possible for us to do that whenever we visit a place, including when we commercialize a public space. And we need to make sure that that's happening. So, the federal government does own these public lands. Right? They are owned in the collective by the United States citizens, but they are managed by the federal government. These lands, for our benefit, have to pull their own weight. Right? They are expensive to maintain. They are expensive to defend. They are expensive to fight forest fires, and they're expensive to build roads in, to maintain mountain bike paths in, so forth. They all come with their own set of expenses, and it would be best if we can find a way for them to carry their own weight, to pay their own way. If that is through wise selection of timber development, mining, which includes oil drilling. But the most important thing is that whenever that activity is done, that it made no impact whatsoever. All right? And unless we can do that, we've got to find other ways to help these lands pay for themselves.
Very smart. All right, so those last two questions are pretty tough. So let's go with, can you tell me two truths and a lie about yourself?
Two truths and a lie about myself.
Yeah.
Well, I did see this question before the meeting and thought about it a little bit, but it's tough. I'm just not a good liar at all. You could win it. You could just take my money at a poker game in a heartbeat. So I'll try to be honest.
Right.
I'm try to trick you. I went to Arizona State University and was there for 3 years between like 1982 and 1985. Another item about me, I stood inside the space shuttle before it was to take off. Another truth would be that I have been to the top of the 3 highest mountains in Montana.
All right. Well, let's see. So first one, the Arizona State, right? I'm gonna say that one's a lie. That's
true.
All right. Just had a feeling because of you went very specific there with the years that you were there for.
That's the only way I can tell the truth is with specificity, you know?
Yeah, because I mean the other ones are very broad, which those are also very cool. That you've been to the top of the 3 highest mountains in Montana. You've been to the space shuttle. That's actually really cool.
Well, awesome. Actually, one of those is a lie.
Oh.
Because you told me you said two truths and a lie, right?
Sure did. Yeah.
Okay.
One of those is a lie.
I worked for NASA as a contractor for a while, and so I actually was in the space shuttle before a mission. But I have, while it is one of my goals, with me and my boys to hit the 10 highest peaks in Montana, I have yet to do the highest 3. We've done a couple of the smaller ones.
Nice. That's awesome. That's a good goal. All right, so next question. What is your stance on a federal minimum wage of $15?
Again, this is one of those situations where pushing this off to the federal government is really not the best idea. When we set minimums, we also set a boundary on what the maximum can be. And I think that our local governments, those who are paying attention to its citizens, their citizens, are already taking action in this direction, and setting, because markets vary widely. I mean, you could go to eastern Montana, and minimum wage would, you could buy a house. If you and your significant other were working minimum wage, you could potentially have a house. Here in Bozeman, no such chance, right? New York City, Los Angeles, any of the big metro, the bigger the city, the less chance that that's going to happen. But in the bigger cities, we're already seeing them establish higher minimum wages, and the market itself is actually driving those wages higher. So while all of the benefits that come with raising the minimum wage are good, that money rolls into the economy, there are places where setting a minimum could also do damage to the local economy, because those employers are going to have to decrease work hours, or some of the things that we actually hear on the news, and the rebuttals against raising the minimum wage. Some of those are actually true.
Mm-hmm. So do you think it should be more of a state-by-state thing then instead of the federal?
I think market by market, those localities ought to take a look at how their population is being impacted, because one of the things that an underpaid worker in areas where we have great masses of underpaid workers, we see drug use, crime. There's other social ills that come from people not making enough money, and if those localities, those smaller governments are smart, they will address those issues by helping boost the economy from the bottom up.
Awesome. All right. So as of 2017, there were 5,952 Montanans who were enrolled in 25 TRIO programs across the state. So do you support allocating federal funding to TRIO, which helps with marginalizing payments for students who are in post-secondary education?
I do.
Okay.
And that's it. I do.
You do? So mind me asking why you do?
Because education is hugely important, and those people who are marginalized and have any difficulty towards opportunity, uh, those are exactly the people we need to be helping. And if we have a social safety net, it is those who are willing to help themselves as much as they can, but have some struggle to get to where everyone else is.
Right. So, final question. Do you support providing free college tuition for a 2-year community college? And if not, what are your thoughts on addressing rising college debt and tuition causes?
I would approach rising college debt with a little bit different uh, method, but I do support uh, extended education. I don't know that we want to make it free because that sets kind of a poor precedent. We could certainly make it significantly more subsidized so that it's far easier to get into, and make sure that those students who are receiving this subsidized are actually making progress towards a degree, because we absolutely do want uh, skilled workers in the labor force. And that there's nothing more that we need, especially if we could have, if people whose jobs they're being automated out of their jobs, if they could go back to school and have a subsidized education for retraining into more technical aspects of their line of work. We need those people in the workforce, because they're what's happening as we automate more and more. The people who had what were previously good paying jobs are now being relegated to doing service jobs, and they're not paying the bills. And so if we could get those people retrained, put them back out in the workforce for jobs that actually exist now, it would be good. So I do support subsidization for the first 2 years only. I think any higher level degree, a student really needs to put their own self and put their own, risk know what they're doing to get into that higher level degree. But those first 2 years, absolutely, it's no different. Really, it's just like saying going to 2 more years of high school. But again, we need to make sure that they're progressing. We can't just say, here it is for free. You get to go be a student and waste 2 years of your life, and then you're 2 years older and still don't have anything to say for it. But as long as they're making progress, then yes, we ought to make that super affordable.
Definitely, yeah. Progress is always good.
Right.
All right, well, that was the last question. Thank you for coming by today, and thanks for spending time with us.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Good question.